If you know me at all, then you know that all a game needs to get me to buy it is either cybernetic enhancements, mechas, or fast movement. Recently, a game came out on Steam promising all three of these things, and it's called Titanfall 2. Holy shit, what a good game. But also Disintegration. The concept's pretty novel. It's like any other FPS campaign, but instead of playing as a ground unit, you hover over the battlefield in a rinky-dink pod racer giving orders and support to the squad below. It's almost like an RTS game if their marketing is to be believed, but that implies this game had any marketing to begin with, so hold your tongue. The word integration in this game's context means the act of uploading your human mind into a robot head. Lots of people do this for lots of different reasons, but all you really need to know is that you play as Romer, this guy who used to be a pilot professionally, and you tag up with some other integrators after breaking out of this, like, space prison. I'm not gonna dwell too far into the plot side of this game because it's a lot to unfold, but basically your squad consists of these other characters who all have their own personalities and abilities at your disposal. At first, the game seems pretty weird because you're just flying through these big empty levels killing enemy hordes without really needing to strategize at all, but that's mostly just the game trying to ease you into things. It's not until like the third or fourth level the gameplay starts to really hit its stride. Even though it has RTS elements, you're still just as much of a foot soldier as all the other squad members. You just happen to also have no clip enabled and you can tell everyone what to focus on. This is pretty refreshing to me since making those bigger decisions like where to defend and where to rotate to without having to begrudgingly walk there yourself puts you in this nice equilibrium right between, hey, I'm a soldier just like you, and I am thy god, you serve mine will. Operating the grab cycle is fun. The movement's quick enough that you never feel bogged down by anything, but the game's hard enough that you can't just fly wherever the fuck you want to. You've got to be pretty strategic about it. Duck behind buildings sometimes, station the squad ahead to give yourself some free room. There was a lot of time I felt like I pulled off some Gigabrain shit just in the nick of time. Like trapping a harder enemy in a slow field while I retreated to get healed, or diverting some of my squad members to take pressure off the back line. What's also really cool is that every level of the campaign you're flying a slightly different vehicle. Like the auto rifle weapons I didn't care that much for, but the sticky bombs, the miniguns, the cannons, yeah, I fuck with that. You also have a backup tool, usually ones that heal your team, and because they reload passively, you can constantly swap between the weapons without spending too much time reloading. I think one of the bigger shames of this game is how, despite its scale, there's not much reward for exploration or trying unconventional routes. Early in the game, I was constantly running into invisible walls and low skyboxes that prevented me from doing what I thought would be a clever plan. I checked as many corners as I could during every level to avoid missing content, but aside from the occasional upgrade chip, I never encountered a cute Easter egg or a side quest or hidden areas or anything. You know, you would think that RTS-inspired and linear level design directly conflict with each other, but apparently that wasn't obvious enough for them to account for it. The game's most difficult when you're in a defensive position and enemies are coming from all sides, and there's a real nuance to keeping your squad safe while they're watching one direction, but you gotta cover all of their blind spots. Most of the time though, you're just on the offense, slowly pushing your way through enemy forces. Eventually they start throwing mini-boss level enemies at you, but to be completely honest, I usually just threw every goddamn ability I had at them and watched them die before the first animation ended. And that's a real shame because through the whole game, you never really fight any enemy that poses a direct threat to you. You always feel like the biggest fish in the pond. And while sometimes you might meet bot pilots capable of dodging or evading fire, they're still pretty goddamn stupid and never think to heal themselves or work together with their allies, kinda like you do with your squad. In between levels, for whatever reason, you get to run on foot and talk to people, kinda like being in the Tower of Destiny 2, only the camera is uncomfortably close and there are useless battle droids everywhere. Otherwise, this is a great opportunity to talk to your squad members and learn about their personalities.
So, now that the industrious Seguin has finally joined us, I gotta ask, your integration, by choice or imposed?
FUNKe, it's fine. Choice.
Really?
I never felt I belonged in the body I had. Integration allowed me to define my identity.
Which is?
Seguin.
I envy the way you can pilot these exquisite machines to their limits, Romer. I would never be able to allow myself such freedom.
As a natural soldier, I would have taken this opportunity to drop a payload, if you catch my meaning. Draining coolant just ain't the same.
I was really hoping at some point in the game there would be that effect and cause moment. You know, that one level in a game that introduces a drastically different but really fun mechanic that stands out from all the other levels. But unfortunately, that moment never came. Aside from occasional indoor segments where you're alone with no squad, the game sticks pretty close to its core formula without deviating much. This is kind of random, but by default the game has a pretty low FOV, and they don't give you any way to raise it at all. By the time I got to the indoor levels, it bugged me so much that I had to download Unreal Engine Unlocker and inject a DLL file just so I could access the console and raise my FOV. I get that you have to conserve performance and that you spend a lot of time shooting things far away, but if you make an FPS game, it needs to have an FOV slider. It's like the one rule: peripheral vision over artistic vision. When spending my upgrade chips, I mostly put them all into damage to make myself a glass cannon. This playstyle worked really well for me, but I also found myself spending a lot more time healing than someone who had spent their chips on regeneration might have. The game progresses at a pretty good tempo, and most levels don't feel dragged out, but I often found myself in the occasional empty span of moving with nothing going on. Sometimes the characters have cute banter with each other mid-game, but it shocked me that they didn't use this more often, especially when nothing is happening. One of the best parts of games like Left 4 Dead is hearing Ellis randomly say shit like, "I remember one time my buddy Keith wanted to invest in Bitcoin. We went to the library to shove dollar bills in the computer CD tray.
Ellis?
Keith said that's how you turn it into crypto."
Hey, Ellis.
Yeah, that
Hey.
book lady sure was pissed.
Hey,
you know, Keith had
Ellis? Hey, Ellis? Yes. Shut up.
What I mean is, when there's downtime in a level, there are things a developer can do to keep the player entertained, and witty dialogue is one of the greatest ways to do it. And I know this game can do it because the cutscenes are generally pretty funny and worth my attention.
Yep. Keep putting it off and complaining to me when things don't work. Maybe we'd have decent comms if this place weren't such an outdated piece of shit.
Hit their blackout tower and we're done.
And I feel like they didn't fully capitalize on this chance they had to carve out an identity for the game through more diverse dialogue. Hearing random banter on the hangar is great, but most of the talking they do on the field only relates to what's happening in the mission. So when nothing's happening in the mission, well, nothing gets talked about. I remember there was one level where every time I died, I had to start at the beginning of this long, empty bridge escorting a payload, and every time I died, I had to sit there in silence for 30 seconds fighting nothing, listening to nothing, just waiting to get to the other side. And this is exactly what I mean. I don't have to be doing something at all times, but I want to be stimulated in some way. I think there was a lot of untapped potential in these characters. I actually love their dynamics with each other, but it never amounts to anything or has any impact when a big event happens between them. Spoiler alert, Agnes is a character who regrets integrating and constantly wishes she could go back to being human. Kokri is a laid-back guy who doesn't mind being a bot and constantly hits on Agnes to no avail. They have this little relationship, and every time I see these guys in the hangar, they're always talking to each other. So, in one of the later missions, Kokri gets caught alone and brutally murdered by the bad guy. But you wouldn't have guessed anybody gave a shit because they're just like, ah, damn, they got Koki.
Alright, let's move on.
What the fuck? My guy got cut down like a willow tree in a free-to-play world, but 6 minutes later, it's like he was never on our crew? There's very little emotional impact on anything that happens in this game. There's a semblance of an overarching story, but I never felt like the stakes escalated or the tensions rose. Stuff just happens for the sake of you going to a new area. The gameplay, likewise, eventually begins to feel like missed opportunities left and right. Sometimes you have to shoot batteries to open a door, like that's somehow a puzzle after the 10th time. Also, I'm operating a flying vehicle, but there is never a fast-paced race-the-clock section. You know, like Han Solo evading enemies kind of stuff. Not once. There's a mechanic where you can't float over empty pits for too long or you'll fall, but I can count on one hand how many times I was even within 100 feet of a pit the entire game. It seems like a missed opportunity. Overall, the game is fun, but basically 10 hours of promising mechanics that never get fleshed out like they deserve to. I think it would have been really beneficial for them to worry less about mechanical diversity and more about making every level as complementary as possible to the gameplay. For better or worse, the game has an open ending that justifies a sequel, which if it get made, I would gladly play, but something tells me this full-price futuristic shooter will probably not sell well enough to get one. But hey, maybe this one's different, right? There's an online PvP, but it's more accurate to say there's an inaccessible online PvP because the 24-hour peak is 60 players and the game's game's been out for a week. So you know what, never mind, this game doesn't have online PvP. I tried queuing multiple times over multiple days, and every time I watch the queue hit 10 minutes, then literally give up trying. What sucks is, I actually think this PvP would have been fun. The whole campaign I felt like I wanted a bigger, more adaptable challenger to face. Fighting another human would be perfect for that. But in all of their wisdom, they decided to barely market and ship a full-price futuristic shooter game. So much like the 2017 crime thriller directed by S. Cyrus Sepher, it was dead on arrival. Quick addendum here, I booted up the game to collect one single-player clip and was greeted with an infinitely connecting to server message. So I rebooted Steam in offline mode, and I still couldn't start the game because it couldn't connect to the server. I'm trying to have a more stoic outlook on life, so I'm not mad about this, I'm just very disappointed. I really hope at some point this game gets a price cut, or fuck man, even goes free to play, because I still really want to try this PvP, but I can't see a scenario where I'll be able to anytime soon. But whatever, Titanfall 2 just came out on Steam, I've got a pretty good backup, I'm not worried about it. Gonna rate this one 1/4 a Maladroid and 3/4 a green out of a blue. I'm rooting for these devs, I get what they're going for, but it needs some more juice, man. Just a little more zest. Alright, that's the video. Peace.